Ladies and gentlemen, history remembers nights that change the course of nations. Nights when power is challenged, when confidence is shaken, and when the illusion of invincibility fades into reality. The long-standing conflict between Iran and Israel is not just a battle of weapons. It is a clash of ideologies, strategies, and survival. Since the Iranian Revolution, these two nations have stood on opposite sides of a deep geopolitical divide. The rivalry between Iran and Israel is deeply rooted in political, ideological, and strategic differences that have evolved over decades. Before 1979, relations between the two countries were relatively stable, even cooperative in certain areas. However, everything changed after the Iranian Revolution, when Iran transformed from a monarchy into an Islamic republic under the leadership of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Following the revolution, Iran adopted a strong anti-Israel stance, refusing to recognize Israel as a legitimate state and openly supporting groups that oppose it. This ideological shift turned what was once a quiet relationship into one of the most intense rivalries in the Middle East. Israel, on the other hand, viewed Iran's growing influence and its nuclear ambitions as a direct threat to its national security. Over the years, this rivalry has not been fought through traditional full-scale wars, but through indirect means, often referred to as proxy conflicts. Iran has supported groups like Hezbollah and other regional allies, while Israel has carried out intelligence operations, cyber attacks, and targeted strikes aimed at weakening Iran's military capabilities. One notable example is the use of cyber warfare, such as the alleged involvement in the Stuxnet attack, which disrupted Iran's nuclear facilities. This long-standing hostility has also been fueled by regional power competition. Both countries seek influence across the Middle East, whether in Syria, Lebanon, or beyond, often finding themselves on opposing sides of conflicts. The situation is further complicated by global alliances, with Israel maintaining strong ties with Western powers, while Iran has built relationships with other regional and international actors. As tensions continued to rise over the years, the rivalry became more visible and more dangerous, gradually shifting from covert operations and shadow conflicts to the brink of direct confrontation. The buildup of mistrust, retaliation, and strategic competition set the stage for moments where the conflict could erupt openly, making each incident not just an isolated event, but part of a much larger historical struggle for power, identity, and survival in the region for decades. The confrontation between Iran and Israel largely remained in the shadows, unfolding through indirect means rather than open warfare. This phase, often described as a shadow war, involved intelligence operations, cyber attacks, and proxy forces operating across different parts of the Middle East. Both nations carefully avoided direct military engagement, understanding that an open war could trigger a much larger regional or even global conflict. Iran extended its influence through allied groups and militias across the region, particularly in countries like Syria and Lebanon. Organizations such as Hezbollah became key players in this strategy, acting as a frontline force against Israeli interests. These groups were equipped, trained, and supported by Iran, allowing it to exert pressure on Israel without engaging directly. This approach provided Iran with strategic depth while maintaining a degree of plausible deniability. On the other side, Israel adopted a policy of preemptive and preventive action. It carried out numerous airstrikes, particularly in Syria, targeting Iranian military positions, weapon shipments, and infrastructure believed to be linked to Tehran's expanding influence. At the same time, Israel relied heavily on its intelligence agency, Mossad, to conduct covert operations aimed at disrupting Iran's strategic capabilities. These included sabotage missions, targeted assassinations of key figures, and cyber operations designed to slow down Iran's nuclear progress. One of the defining characteristics of this phase was its ambiguity. Neither side openly claimed responsibility for many of these actions, yet both were fully aware of each other's involvement. This created a tense but controlled environment where escalation was managed carefully. Each move was calculated to send a message without crossing the threshold into full-scale war. However, over time, this balance began to erode. The frequency and intensity of attacks increased, and the line between covert and overt actions started to blur. Incidents that were once hidden became more visible, and retaliation grew more direct and immediate. Strategic patience gave way to urgency, and signaling turned into confrontation. Eventually, the conflict reached a tipping point where indirect methods were no longer sufficient. When strikes began to target deeper territories and more critical assets, the need to respond openly became unavoidable. What had long been a hidden struggle began to emerge into the open, transforming the nature of the conflict from a controlled shadow war into a direct and dangerous military confrontation between two powerful regional rivals. At the outset of open confrontation, Israel held a clear and significant advantage rooted in decades of military development, technological innovation, and strategic preparedness. Unlike many countries in the region, Israel had invested heavily in building one of the most advanced defense systems in the world, combining cutting-edge technology with highly trained personnel and a strong intelligence network. One of the most critical elements of Israel's strength was its multi-layered air defense system, particularly the Iron Dome. This system was specifically designed to intercept short-range rockets and artillery shells, and it had proven highly effective in previous conflicts. Alongside it, more advanced systems like David's sling and arrow provided protection against medium and long-range threats. Together, these systems created a defensive shield that gave Israel a sense of security against incoming attacks. In addition to defense, Israel's offensive capabilities were equally formidable. Its air force is considered one of the most powerful in the world, equipped with advanced fighter jets capable of conducting precision strikes over long distances. These aircraft allowed Israel to target strategic locations deep within hostile territory with a high degree of accuracy. This capability was demonstrated in various operations where Israel carried out airstrikes against Iranian-linked positions in Syria and elsewhere, often without suffering significant losses. Another key factor in Israel's initial advantage was its intelligence superiority. Agencies like Mossad and military intelligence units played a crucial role in gathering detailed information about enemy movements, facilities, and plans. This intelligence allowed Israel to act proactively rather than reactively, striking first and disrupting threats before they could fully materialize. Operations attributed to Israel, including cyber attacks and targeted assassinations, highlighted the depth and reach of its intelligence capabilities. This phase of the conflict marked a clear departure from the past, as Iran stepped out of the shadows of proxy warfare and engaged in a direct and undeniable show of force, reshaping the dynamics of confrontation and forcing a reassessment of strategic calculations on all sides. The retaliation by Iran did not only carry military consequences, it created a deep and lasting psychological impact within Israel. For decades, Israeli society had developed a strong sense of security built upon advanced defense systems, rapid response capabilities, and a belief in the state's ability to neutralize threats before they could cause significant harm. This sense of confidence was not just strategic, it was embedded in everyday life. However, the events of that night challenged this perception in a profound way. As missiles and drones entered Israeli airspace, warning sirens echoed across cities, forcing civilians into shelters. Daily routines were abruptly disrupted, and a sense of uncertainty spread among the population. Even though many of the incoming threats were intercepted by systems like the Iron Dome, the mere fact that such a large-scale attack could reach Israeli territory was enough to shake public confidence. This psychological shift was particularly significant because Israel has long relied not only on military strength, but also on deterrence. The idea that its enemies would hesitate to attack due to the expected consequences. Iran's direct and visible retaliation tested that deterrence, raising questions about how secure the nation truly was against evolving threats. The impact extended beyond immediate fear and anxiety. It influenced public discourse, media narratives, and political debates within Israel. Citizens began to question whether existing defense measures were sufficient, and whether future conflicts might bring even greater risks. The image of invulnerability, carefully built over years, faced a moment of strain. Moreover, the psychological pressure was not limited to civilians. Military and political leaders also had to confront the implications of this shift. Decision-makers were forced to reassess their strategies, considering not only the physical defense of a nation, but also the morale and confidence of its people. In modern conflicts, maintaining public trust is as critical as maintaining military strength. Another important dimension was the element of unpredictability. The use of drones and coordinated missile attacks introduced new challenges that were harder to anticipate and counter completely. This uncertainty created a lingering sense of vulnerability, as people realized that future attacks might become more complex and difficult to defend against. On a broader level, this moment highlighted how warfare is no longer confined to physical destruction. The psychological domain, fear, perception, and confidence, has become a central battleground. By penetrating not just airspace, but also the sense of security, Iran's actions demonstrated that influencing the emotions of a population can be as impactful as any military strike. This shift in perception did not necessarily mean a loss of capability for Israel, but it marked a moment where confidence was tested, assumptions were challenged, and the human dimension of conflict became impossible to ignore. The confrontation between Iran and Israel highlights a broader transformation in the nature of warfare in the 21st century. Traditional wars were once defined by clear battle lines, large armies, and direct engagements on physical battlefields. Today, however, conflict has expanded into multiple domains, making it far more complex, unpredictable, and far-reaching. One of the most defining features of modern warfare is the integration of advanced technology. Weapon systems are no longer limited to tanks and artillery. They now include precision-guided missiles, surveillance satellites, and unmanned aerial vehicles. Drones, in particular, have changed the way conflicts are fought, offering the ability to strike targets with precision while reducing the risk to personnel. Both Iran and Israel have invested heavily in such technologies, using them not only for attack, but also for intelligence gathering and reconnaissance. Another critical dimension is cyber warfare. Operations in cyberspace can disrupt infrastructure, disable communication systems, and even interfere with critical national programs without a single shot being fired. A notable example is the Stuxnet incident, which demonstrated how digital tools could achieve strategic objectives that once required conventional military action. This type of warfare is often invisible to the public, but can have long-lasting and significant consequences. Information warfare has also become a central component. Controlling narratives, influencing public opinion, and shaping global perception are now key strategic objectives. Governments and organizations use media platforms, official statements, and even social networks to present their version of events, justify their actions, and gain international support. In such an environment, perception can be as powerful as reality, and winning the information battle can strengthen a nation's position without direct confrontation. Additionally, modern conflicts often involve a combination of state and non-state actors. Groups like Hezbollah operate alongside or in support of larger national strategies, blurring the lines between conventional armies and irregular forces. This creates a layered conflict environment where multiple players with different capabilities and objectives are involved simultaneously. Speed and coordination have also become crucial. Decisions must be made rapidly, often in real time, as threats can emerge and evolve within minutes. The ability to integrate intelligence, communication, and military response into a unified system gives a significant advantage in such scenarios. Delays or miscalculations can lead to immediate and potentially irreversible consequences. Furthermore, modern warfare extends beyond the battlefield into economic and diplomatic arenas. Sanctions, trade restrictions, and international alliances play a vital role in shaping the course of conflicts. Countries seek to weaken their opponents not only through military means, but also by targeting their economies and global standing. Perhaps most importantly, the boundaries between war and peace have become increasingly blurred. Conflicts may simmer for years without a formal declaration of war, with periods of escalation followed by temporary calm. This constant state of tension creates an environment where nations must remain perpetually prepared for sudden shifts. In this evolving landscape, the conflict between Iran and Israel serves as a clear example of how warfare has transformed into a multidimensional struggle, where success depends not only on military strength, but also on technological innovation, strategic communication, and the ability to adapt to rapidly changing conditions. Amid the strategic calculations and displays of power between Iran and Israel, the most profound and often overlooked consequence of conflict is its human cost. Beyond headlines, military achievements, and political narratives, it is ordinary people who bear the heaviest burden of war. Families, children, and communities whose lives are disrupted in ways that statistics can never fully capture. When tensions escalate into direct confrontation, civilian areas often become vulnerable, either as unintended targets or as part of broader strategic objectives. Homes are damaged or destroyed, forcing families to flee in search of safety. In many cases, people are displaced multiple times, moving from one temporary shelter to another, carrying with them only what they can manage. This constant instability creates not only physical hardship, but also deep emotional and psychological trauma. Children are among the most affected. Growing up in an environment marked by sirens, explosions, and uncertainty can have long-term effects on their mental health and development. Education is frequently disrupted, as schools are closed or repurposed for emergency use. A generation raised under such conditions may carry the scars of conflict far into the future, shaping how they view the world and their place within it. Healthcare systems also come under immense strain during periods of conflict. Hospitals may become overwhelmed with casualties, while shortages of medical supplies and personnel further complicate the situation. In some instances, medical facilities themselves become damaged or inaccessible, limiting the ability to provide urgent care. This not only affects those directly injured in the conflict, but also individuals with ongoing medical needs who struggle to receive treatment. Economic consequences add another layer of hardship. Businesses are forced to close, infrastructure is damaged, and livelihoods are lost. For many families, this means a sudden loss of income and an uncertain future. Rebuilding after such disruptions can take years, and in some cases, entire communities are permanently altered. The psychological impact extends far beyond immediate fear. Living under the constant threat of attack creates a sense of anxiety and insecurity that can persist even during periods of relative calm. People may find it difficult to return to normal routines, as the possibility of renewed conflict always lingers in the background. This ongoing stress affects not only individuals, but also the social fabric of communities, weakening trust and stability. Humanitarian organizations, such as International Committee of the Red Cross, often play a critical role in providing relief, delivering aid, and supporting affected populations. However, their efforts are frequently challenged by access restrictions, security risks, and the sheer scale of need during intense conflicts. Another important aspect is the global response. Images and reports of civilian suffering can influence international opinion, prompting calls for ceasefires, negotiations, or intervention. Yet, despite widespread awareness, resolving the underlying causes of conflict remains a complex and often elusive goal. Ultimately, the human cost of war serves as a stark reminder that behind every strategic decision are real lives being impacted. The destruction of infrastructure can be rebuilt, and political situations can change, but the loss of life, the trauma experienced, and the disruption of human dignity leave lasting effects that extend far beyond the duration of any single conflict. The confrontation between Iran and Israel offers more than just a regional narrative. It presents a broader lesson for the entire world about the evolving nature of power, conflict, and responsibility in an interconnected age. What unfolded is not only a reflection of two nations in tension, but also a case study in how quickly situations can escalate when long-standing rivalries, national pride, and strategic interests collide. One of the most significant lessons is that military strength alone cannot guarantee lasting security. Nations may develop advanced weapons, sophisticated defense systems, and powerful alliances, but these do not eliminate vulnerability entirely. The events demonstrated that even the most prepared countries can be challenged in unexpected ways, reminding the global community that no system is completely foolproof. Another important takeaway is the danger of escalation. In modern conflicts, actions and reactions occur at a much faster pace than in the past. A single strike can trigger a chain of responses, each more intense than the last, creating a cycle that becomes increasingly difficult to control. This highlights the importance of restraint, communication, and strategic patience. Without these elements, even a limited confrontation can spiral into a much larger and more destructive conflict. The situation also underscores the importance of diplomacy. While military actions may achieve short-term objectives, they rarely resolve the deeper issues that drive conflict. Dialogue, negotiation, and international mediation remain essential tools for addressing underlying tensions. Organizations such as the United Nations often play a role in facilitating these efforts, although their success depends on the willingness of involved parties to engage constructively. Additionally, the conflict reveals how interconnected the modern world has become. Regional tensions no longer remain confined to specific geographic areas. They have global implications. Economic markets, political alliances, and international security can all be affected by events in a single region. This interconnectedness means that conflicts are not just local concerns, but global challenges that require collective attention. Another lesson lies in the power of perception. In today's world, how events are interpreted can be just as important as what actually happens. Public opinion, media coverage, and international narratives shape how conflicts are understood and responded to. Managing perception has become a strategic priority, influencing everything from diplomatic relations to domestic stability. Furthermore, the conflict highlights the need for adaptability. As warfare continues to evolve, nations must continuously reassess their strategies, technologies, and policies. Relying on outdated assumptions or past successes can lead to miscalculations. Flexibility and innovation are essential for navigating the complexities of modern conflict. At a deeper level, the situation serves as a reminder of the shared responsibility of humanity to prevent unnecessary suffering. While nations pursue their interests, the broader goal should always be the preservation of peace and stability. The cost of failing to achieve this is measured not only in physical destruction, but also in the long-term impact on societies and future generations. In this context, the events act as a cautionary example, urging countries around the world to reflect on their own approaches to conflict, to prioritize dialogue over confrontation, and to recognize that true strength lies not just in the ability to respond to threats, but in the wisdom to prevent them from arising in the first place. In the end, the events between Iran and Israel stand as a powerful reminder that no nation, regardless of its strength or technology, is beyond the reach of consequence. Power can shift, defenses can be tested, and pride can be challenged in moments that reshape perception and history itself. Yet beyond the demonstrations of force and retaliation, the deeper truth remains unchanged. Every escalation carries the weight of uncertainty, and every decision made in conflict echoes far beyond the battlefield. Cities may rebuild, systems may recover, and strategies may evolve, but the trust and stability lost in such moments take far longer to restore. This is why the world continues to watch such tensions not with admiration for destruction, but with a growing understanding of how fragile peace truly is. The lesson is not in who struck harder, but in how urgently the cycle of confrontation calls for restraint, dialogue, and a path away from repeated escalation. Ultimately, history does not remember conflicts only for their victories or losses, but for the choices that shape their outcome, and the opportunity still open for a different future to be chosen.